Well, hello again. It's David Willey here on a lovely summer's evening. I've got Finn the dog with me again as usual. And this time I want to tap into a completely different strain, music. And just listen to this. Now, either you haven't got a soul, or you've never seen the movie maybe, but if that doesn't do something to you, seek help. What I want to talk to you really about this evening is, or in this particular session, is things that, again, I used the phrase before, got us going. This is back in 1971, big war movie themes by Jeff Love and his orchestra. And this introduced me, and I know many others out there, to film music, but also for those of us interested, the war theme. That was something a bit special if you liked your war movies. And I just want to go through here because I know I'm not alone in having this album when I was a kid or youngster. Others have had it. And I know as well, if you just take that forward, that there's the equivalents of today. I'm sure many of you have got your CDs from A Bridge Too Far. I got the album from A Bridge Too Far, I remember as well. And all the other war movies that have come on subsequently. And let's not kid ourselves, it gets us in the mood, it gets us going, certain of these themes that way. And I'm not ashamed to admit, I've got the CD I put in the car when I'm heading off to an event, and I put that on, and there's one or two of the tracks, some of them on here, some of them not now. Things like Aces High, the kind of Luftwaffe March, as it's sometimes called, by Ron Goodwin from the Battle of Britain. And I always remember that I know it's not just me because other people have said it to me, but we sometimes be playing that out of the speakers at the Tank Museum in the past, and you suddenly see one or two people, their head will go up and they'd mutter to someone, oh, it's from this, and there would be a sense of, I don't know, you were just perked up a bit by listening to that music or the associations that music brought. And for me, back in the day, getting this when I was a youngster, I remember because some of the films I'd seen, some of the music was familiar, others didn't. So you were kind of imagining that film as well back then. And it undoubtedly influenced some of the thoughts you had, the way you acted. And I wouldn't be surprised one or two people in their career choices, whatever, that sense of the music that when it on its own is still staggering. And, you know, not this conversation, but why is it abstract noises put together can give us emotions that can lead us to tears, lead us to go over the top, lead us, you know, great sense of patriotism with something like a national anthem or whatever those things are. Music has this enormous power over us. And we never quite can pin it down. It's very hard to understand all those things. But for a youngster and that military music and then the association with a film and a movie and whatever else that put its hooks in us, I am sure I'm not alone in thinking that helped bring us to the subject area, our interest, etc. Sorry, dog. So I just wanted to talk about this one because in a number of different ways, but how these things come about. Jeff Love and his orchestra. Jeff Love was son of a jazz musician who came to the UK in the 20s, I think it was. He married a local Yorkshire lass. Jeff grew up in Yorkshire. He plays a trombone in a local band as a youngster. Joins the King's Royal Rifles in World War II, sees service after the Second World War, He goes on to work with various Dixie jazz bands, the BBC. I think he ends up doing the music with Shirley Bassey at one point, Peter, Paul and Mary, I think it is, A World Without Love, all sorts of things. You'll find his name appears there. And again, great musician, band leader, could arrange things as well. And he ended up with doing a number of albums with Music for Pleasure, MFP. MFP had access to the EMI catalogue, and what they tried to do was pick on albums and music that they were trying to sort of put together in a way that was cheaper, approachable. I hoped I was going to find my original copy of this. I had to buy another one at the moment. I can't find it. I've got it. I know I've saved it somewhere. And I was hoping there was going to be that sticker on the corner saying what I paid, you know, whether it was 25p or 75p. I can't remember back in 71. But Music for Pleasure, the key thing about them, they marketed the EMI catalogue. They sometimes put things back together. They got everything from Frank Sinatra, big names as well, but they did it at a modest price. And they also tried to market their albums in places that people didn't normally go to. So they did it in newsagents, they did it in WH Smith's. It wasn't just a typical record shop type of product. And they did a series of big thrillers, all sorts of things, television, theme tunes, etc. for television series. And this one, of course, big war movie themes. And this was one that I can't exactly remember when I brought it home, but it meant a lot to me in the sense. And that cover, I know the cover art as well, because the cover art in itself tries to encompass a number of the films that are there. So you recognise Peter O'Toole, Michael Caine from the Battle of Britain, John Wayne, you know, Bridge on the River Kwai, things going on, 63, Squadron Dam Busters, Green Berets, etc. Tom Chantrell does the cover, this cover art, and he's one of these guys, again, when you look up, he's basically doesn't particularly like art school, goes and joins an agency, works through a number of early commercial artists. Before the war, I think it is, he's doing different bits of commercial arts for an agency in London. But then in 1938 does his first proper film poster. And in the Second World War, he does propaganda posters, all sorts of bits and pieces that way. But he becomes quite famous as a poster designer, and you will have seen his posters, even though you don't realise it. He did everything from Hammer Horror, the Carry On films. He did the famous one with Raquel Welch in whatever it is, 1000 BC or whatever that one was, with her in her lovely little rabbit skin outfit. He does one of the versions of the Star Wars poster that George Lucas likes and more, that ends up being used certainly over here than an earlier version that was done by, was it Hildebrand Brothers, I think it was. It was a bit too dark, he thought. So he's a great name that way, but he does this cover art, and he used to work for a company called Allardyce Palmer, where they basically did, you name it, sorts of things, but you'll suddenly realise his name's appearing in bits and pieces. And this is one of the things he was doing, was album covers. And so you'll see his artwork on a number of other ones that way. And again, I go back to, because when you were younger, in an age that was before really, well, of course, before the internet, before you could find out information and everything, there was something about looking at the cover art that tried to help you understand what that film was going to be about. You know, you read more into this, certainly from the point of view where you hadn't even seen the film yet. So what, you know, what was going on with all these bits and pieces that way. So what's on here? What are those things then that Jeff Luff ends up playing? So if you go through them, I won't go dwell on all of them, but some of them, again, there's stories and stories. And as we like our history, we peel these layers away. Sorry, Finn, I'm ignoring you, aren't I? The first one is one that we all whistled, we all knew at school, etc. Colonel Bogey. Now, KJ Alford was actually a pseudonym for, and I completely forget his name, so I've written it down for you all the time, but Alford was not the person we thought he was. He was Frederick Joseph Ricketts. Okay, now because he was the bandmaster, sometimes he's described, if you like military band music, you know about Ricketts, but he was sometimes described as the British Sousa in terms of these marches, military marches and everything else that way. But because he was serving in the military and he ends up leading, becomes bandmaster for the Royal Marines, etc., he dies in 1945. Because of that, he had to have a pseudonym because it was frowned upon if you were writing music, etc. And it seemed like you've got a second career when surely being bandmaster is a full enough occupation. So his pseudonym, he comes out with Kenneth J. Alford. And that's where, again, he writes the famous Colonel Bogey March. Colonel Bogey, by the way, probably from a golfing term, as in a bogey. And that music is combined with another theme for the famous Bridge on the River Kwai by Arnold. Arnold is another prolific film score writer. And so there's two themes in there, but the one we know about are called, because it was always the wartime, you know, Hitler, he's only got one, etc. But you'll know that one. And so that was the famous opening to Bridge on the River Kwai, which is really quite something, you know. And again, it's those memories of that particular movie, because that was one I remember seeing all the time, because that was your classic Sunday afternoon, you know, the big movie one. Bridge on the River Kwai was a big one. We'd all seen as well another one that's on here, the black and white of the Dam Busters. But there's some on here, you see, I never got to see the Green Berets till much later. Is Paris Burning? Didn't see that one till quite some time later. But because I'd listened to this album and the music, when that film appears, the music's familiar, but not necessarily the context in the film there. So suddenly you get that sense of, I know this, but actually it's the first time I've actually seen that film. Now, one of the ones that I just know, and why I said that business earlier about listen to this and what it does to you, because one of the famous ones that's on here is music from the Battle of Britain, which has its own amazing story behind it. Those of you who know about this, forgive me if I just witter on a little bit, but what happens is they're making the film and they've commissioned an English composer. He was an interesting character, a bit of a boozer, womanizer, odd character called, gets a knighthood, Sir William Walton. And again, look him up afterwards if you want to listen. There'll be bits of that music, coronation music, etc. Or something. Oh yeah, I love this. And things he did that were really very good that way. Now, the problem was United Artists, when they heard his music for the film Battle of Britain, decided to drop it. And at the last moment, they went to another absolutely brilliant film composer called Ron Goodwin, who, again, you will have heard his music all over the place. Brilliant, brilliant composer, British film music, all sorts of things he did that way. And the argument was from United Artists that they weren't too sure about Sir William Walton's, and they said, oh look, there's not enough music here for doing an album. And of course, back in those days when the film came out, the album came out, and personally I grew up back in Eastbourne, and they made a huge fuss at the local Curzon cinema when the Battle of Britain was first shown. You know, the cinema was decorated, they'd filmed off Beachy Head. These were big events, you know, when you used to go to the cinema and there was an intermission. This was quite something when a movie like that came out. So it was a bit of a shock, because Walton himself only found out that he'd been dropped from the film when he opens the paper one weekend, and it says, you know, small print, you know, kerfuffle going on in the background there. Now, Laurence Olivier, who was in the film, knew Sir William Walton, and he said, look, I'm going to drop my name from this movie or something or other if you don't do something about that. And Guy Hamilton, who was a director of Goldfinger, he's a director of the Battle of Britain, he says he's mad with United Artists because he thinks Walton's come up with the type of music he wanted. He wanted spare, not, you know, not in your face all the time music there. And so he was upset as well. And he says, you know, he storms out the room apparently, according to one story. And he says, you know, what are you going to have next? You know, Frank Sinatra singing Spitfires in the Night type thing or whatever, you know. So there was a bit of kerfuffle there. So United Artists turn around and they say, okay, we'll keep one piece of William Walton's music in there, and that's this famous slightly abstract bit, which is Battle in the Air, which when you watch the film is just staggering. And again, I go back to, because it was one of those films that when you watch the first time, gosh, wasn't it great? You watch it again, you know, the aerial sequences are just staggering. It's a genuinely great movie, as long as you forget the bit about Susanna York and the love interest thrown in there for no good reason. But the rest of it is a really, you know, and there's another book coming out, I think, fairly soon on the making of it and everything, because again, you know, real planes, lovely locations, blowing up a hangar at Duxford, you know, all the things that of course we just wouldn't be allowed these days. But that sense, and isn't it great also because it is one of those fantastic films that the music just is wonderful. So when you can listen to the whole of William Walton's music, it's out there on CD, it's on the internet, etc. You can listen to that. But in the final film, you only hear this Battle in the Sky music to a certain scene, and that was done as a compromise. So certain offended parties like Sir Laurence Olivier were basically calmed down. Now what they do, they go to Ron Goodwin and say to him, look, we now need a film score for this. And of course, here's the irony, you know, you want to think like, oh, they ditched the great one. But here comes Ron Goodwin and creates an amazing score that we're used to listening to now, and is just stunning. You think of the opening of the Battle of Britain, how many people watch that, just that opening bit, because of the way the music matches perfectly. He does this fantastic pastiche called Aces High of a German kind of military ching ching ching, you know, marching type thing. And it's beautifully done that way and really matches fantastically. And when I was looking up this, I found a little quote from a gramophone, I think it was, or BBC magazine that was on the story of how William Walton be dropped and how Ron Goodwin comes into place. And this, I'm just going to read you this one. Both scores will probably be remembered less for their individual artistic merit than for the controversy they caused. Utter bollocks. If you know the films, or you know the film music is staggeringly good, and most people don't know the controversy. Of course, if you're in the music bit that way, you know, oh yes, it was a spat between and all that stuff. Complete tosh, I personally think there, because most of us will remember that film for the great music, not the controversy round the back, because however sad it was for Sir William Walton's bit, and you listen to the music that's in there, it's staggeringly good. And the way it's overlaid with, you know, the female WAF controller trying to contact the pilot, and then back to this aerial battle scene, which is beautifully crafted, beautifully edited and put together. And this sense of the underlying music that's there, of the drama. And yet along comes Ron Goodwin and does a fantastic score in the Ron Goodwin style. Absolutely foot-tapping, wonderful music, really rich in his scores. And of course, back to the album, Ron Goodwin's on here another couple of times. His famous 633 Squadron, you know, beat that again as another wham-pow, fantastic bit of music that meets that. And he does as well Where Eagles Dare and, you know, the Miss Marple movies and everything. So he's another one. Definitely listen out to his stuff, because wonderful stuff that way. But I delve into that one because, again, as we love with our histories, just as there is music, there's film, there's all these things, there's another layer to learn about. There's another peeling back thing. But while I'm not having a go in particular for this one, but the gramophone review guy, because of course, if you came at this subject from the film, you love that music. If you come at just from a biography of people like Sir William Walton, maybe not. Okay, there's only 4 minutes of his music left in the film there, but it's still rather something special. So what else did I want to talk about with this one? I just think it's for me, that was an album that was indicative, maybe as a generational thing, but that way we came to it, my own copy, I can't help but remember, you know, like many of you, if you remember playing your 33 RPMs all the time, there'd be a scratch at some moment or something would happen, and you get used to the music knowing that at this moment it's going to jump slightly or there'll be a crackle or two. And but it was, again, whether it brings back that emotion from when you were younger, when you were first hearing this thing, but that emotion is taken with you through life. And I think some of us, I know all of you there, you've probably got your own favourite music that comes from a film, those two things together, whether we listen to the music on its own. The emotions, again, fantastically, that music can evoke in us, but this sense of listening to it at the right time. And I keep repeating, I'm not the only one I know, because I've talked to various people about this, what it is that gets them going, what perks a step up. You talk to the soldiers, whether it's a regimental march, whether it's at certain things, you suddenly hear things that you don't particularly, and then suddenly they're playing the pipes and everyone's hackles are up and off they trot down there at a parade or something. And you can see everyone's got it. It's got the hooks in you, and if at that moment everyone says, look, the enemy's over there, face that way, we're going to charge them, you'd be with them because of that, what that music has managed to do to you in bringing you on, in inspiring, in getting that. And again, some of that film music, because of the imagery it goes with, the stories, it's that, I can't help feel as a generational thing. I got it from big war movie things. I'm sure lots of you are getting it from other movies, whether it's, the play on Elgar in Dunkirk. It's all sorts of things that come that way that give us that emotion. And how do we recognise that? When is it we smile at certain things, like the lines from some of these movies, etc. You'll see on people's T-shirts, you'll see all that. But for me, back to that beginning bit of music, just a little bit of it, suddenly I'm there, I'm in the mood, I've got that sense of the moment, and all I can say is thank you for people like Ron Goodwin, and thank you for Jess Love and his orchestra and the artwork, because that was part of getting me interested in things, and do come back with what gets you interested in things as well. Many thanks. You're not going to bark? No, me, you idiot. Over here. Come and say hello. Come over here. Come on, that's more like it.